Zero wasn't rich. He wasn't reckless either. He was the kind of person the system promised would be fine. Every month, his salary landed in his bank account like clockwork, and every month, he watched it disappear the same way. Rent, groceries, fuel, phone bill, insurance. Whatever was left was called savings, even though it felt more like a leftover scrap. But still, there was comfort in seeing that number, because in the modern world, that number is reality. We don't hold money anymore. We don't count it. We don't feel its weight in our hands. We don't hide it under mattresses like our grandparents did. We trust glowing screens. We trust apps. We trust passwords and fingerprints and little green check marks that tell us we're safe. Zero would open his banking app the way some people open a fridge, just to make sure something was still there. And as long as the balance was visible, he could breathe. That was the deal. Work hard, stay responsible, pay your bills, and the system will protect you. Banks were supposed to be vaults, solid buildings with marble floors, places where your money waited quietly until you needed it. But the truth is, banks don't store money the way people imagine. They store trust, and trust is fragile. Most people never think about it. They assume the bank has their cash sitting somewhere, untouched, reserved, safe, like a box with their name on it. But Zero's money wasn't sitting in a box. It was moving, being lent out, being recycled, being used. His savings were not really savings. They were a promise, and promises only work when nobody asks for them all at once. That night, Zero sat on his bed and checked his account. Payday had hit. The number looked normal. He exhaled. Maybe this month would be different. Maybe he could finally build something. Then he tapped transfer. The screen loaded longer than usual. A spinning circle, 5 seconds, 10. Then a message appeared. Transaction failed. Please try again later. Zero stared at it. He tried again. Same message. And, for the first time in his life, he felt something cold underneath his ribs. Not panic, something worse. Doubt. The next morning, Zero woke up to a strange silence. Not the peaceful kind, the unnatural kind, like the world was holding its breath. He made coffee, opened his phone, and checked his bank app again. The balance was still there, the same number, the same reassuring digits. But when he tried to send money to his landlord, the transfer button didn't respond. He refreshed the screen. A red notification appeared. Service temporarily unavailable. Zero blinked, then laughed under his breath, like it was a joke. Banks don't go down. Not in real life, not in normal countries, not in a modern economy. But outside his apartment, people were already walking faster than usual. Cars were lined up at gas stations. A man on the sidewalk was yelling into his phone, his voice cracking like glass. Zero drove to the nearest ATM. A line of people stretched across the parking lot, quiet and tense, like mourners at a funeral. When it was his turn, he inserted his card. The machine whirred, then flashed 2 words: out of service. The man behind him cursed. A woman began to cry. Zero stood there, frozen, staring at the screen like it was a warning sign on the edge of a cliff, because something didn't make sense. If his money was in the bank, why couldn't he take it out? And that's when the truth begins. Banks are not vaults. They are machines. When you deposit money, the bank doesn't lock it away. It doesn't keep it untouched. It uses it. It lends it out. It multiplies it. It turns your deposit into loans, mortgages, credit lines, into profit. Your balance isn't a pile of cash waiting for you. It's a digital IOU, a promise that the bank will give you money when you ask. But banks only work if most people never ask at the same time, because the money isn't sitting there, it's everywhere else. And when fear spreads, people don't run to the bank because they're greedy. They run because they suddenly remember one terrifying fact. A promise is not the same as possession. The news called it a technical issue. The bank called it scheduled maintenance. But in the streets, nobody believed those words. Because the line outside the ATM kept growing. And when a system built on trust starts to crack, even a small crack can swallow everything. Zero looked at his phone again. The number was still there. His money still existed, but it was trapped behind glass. And in that moment, he understood something horrifying. You can be broke, while your bank account says you're fine. By the third day, the city no longer felt normal. It felt like a place where invisible oxygen was running out. ATM lines became crowds. Crowds became arguments. Arguments became shouting. And shouting became silence again. The heavy kind. The kind that follows after people realize no one is coming to help. Zero walked past the bank branch on his way to work. The doors were locked. Inside, the lights were on. The employees were there. He could see them through the glass, moving like ghosts behind a barrier. Outside, a handwritten sign was taped to the door. Withdrawals temporarily limited. Temporarily. That word sounded harmless, like a rainstorm, like a small delay. But everyone knew what it really meant. It meant we don't have it. Zero checked his phone again. His salary was still visible. His balance still looked healthy. But when he tried to pay for groceries, the card reader beeped and flashed a message that made his stomach drop. Declined. He tried again. Declined. The cashier didn't look surprised. She didn't even apologize. She just moved on to the next customer, like she'd already seen this story play out 100 times. Zero stepped outside with nothing in his hands. He sat in his car and stared at the steering wheel. His rent was due in 4 days. His electricity bill was due in 7. His credit card payment was due in 9. And suddenly, his entire life felt like it was being timed by a countdown clock. That night, his landlord texted him. Reminder, rent due soon, no delays. Zero didn't reply. Because what could he say? My money exists, but I can't touch it. That sentence sounded insane, like something from a dystopian movie. But it was happening, and it wasn't just him. Restaurants stopped accepting card payments. Gas stations demanded cash only. Small businesses couldn't pay their employees because transfers were frozen. People who owned shops were watching their inventory disappear while their bank balances sat useless on a screen. The system wasn't collapsing with explosions. It was collapsing with paperwork, with delays, with temporary restrictions, with polite corporate language that masked panic. And the worst part was realizing who got saved first. Large companies still had access to credit lines. Big institutions still moved money behind closed doors. But normal people like Zero, they were given limits, caps, restrictions, a daily allowance, like children. That's what liquidity collapse looks like. Not poverty, not unemployment, just the sudden realization that your money is no longer yours. Zero looked at his bank balance one more time. The number was still there, and it felt like the cruelest joke ever written. When people imagine financial collapse, they picture chaos, riots, fires, sirens, violence, but history shows something far more terrifying. Collapse usually begins quietly, a frozen transfer, a closed ATM, a polite message on a screen that says, "Please try again later." It has happened in different countries, in different decades, under different leaders. The names change, the flags change, the speeches change, but the pattern stays the same. First, debt expands, then trust weakens, then banks tighten, and suddenly, the middle class realizes they were standing on glass the entire time. Because modern money isn't a physical object, it's a network, a system of digital promises built on confidence, backed by institutions that assume the public will remain calm. And when that calm breaks, even briefly, the machine stops. The cruel truth is that most people don't lose money because they made bad choices. They lose money because the rules change overnight. And when the rules change, the people with real assets and real access survive. The rest are trapped. Zero didn't lose his job. He didn't gamble in stocks. He didn't buy luxury cars. He simply lived like millions of responsible middle-class workers live, and still ended up staring at a bank balance he couldn't use. That is what fake money means. Not that the number disappears, but that the number no longer has power. And the lesson isn't to live in fear. It's to understand what money really is. Cash is access, food is security, skills are survival, debt is a leash, and a bank account is not ownership. It is permission. Permission that can be revoked. The middle class is told to trust the system, to keep everything digital, to keep everything inside institutions. But history whispers a darker message. When trust collapses, money becomes just ink, and bank balances become just pixels. Zero sat at home that night, staring at his phone. The balance was still there. And for the first time, he didn't feel relief. He felt exposed, because he finally understood something most people never want to admit. The most terrifying part isn't losing your money, it's realizing it was never truly yours.